I've previously stated that current smart telescopes like the ZWO Seestars are jack of all trades, master of none. And what I meant by that is they can do a very nice job on many types of astrophotography. But in terms of image quality, they still don't yet measure up to a more expensive, heavy, specialized rig that you could put together yourself from component parts. And the newest Seestar, the S30 Pro, doesn't change that. But the S30 Pro is the best jack of all trades smart scope that I've ever tested. It's the exact same size as the S30, but the Pro, they've now increased the sensor area inside ×4 behind both the telescope and the wide-angle lens, and they've added a dedicated Milky Way mode that allows for stacked Milky Way, time lapses, and star trails, which opens up the Seestars to the world of wide-field nightscape imaging. ZWO sent me the S30 Pro a couple weeks ago, which was just long enough to put it through its paces and also compare it to the regular S30 that they'd sent to me previously. So let's jump into my tests and comparisons. For the first set of tests, we'll be looking at the Orion Nebula, which is the brightest, most colorful nebula out right now. It's a winter target in the Northern Hemisphere. And from my fairly dark location here in rural New Hampshire, it's even a naked eye object, meaning that I can look up at the night sky at the constellation Orion and look for Orion's belt, and right below that see a smudge of light right there in Orion's sword, and that's Orion Nebula. So for this first test, I'm just using the Seestars normally, no advanced features. I'll just go into stargazing mode on both the S30 and the S30 Pro and let it image Orion Nebula with the light pollution filter turned off. That's important. I don't want it on because I'm going after dust, and I'll image it for 30 minutes. And here are the resulting stacked images. And you can see, as I said in the intro, that the Pro image is 4 times bigger overall, which is clear in this context. But if you see these images full screen on your phone, you may think, wait, the regular S30 is more zoomed in on the nebula. Isn't that what I want? Well, that's actually not quite the right way to think about it. These telescopes have the same resolving power because they have the same aperture and they actually have the same pixel size. So they're equally zoomed in on the deep sky objects. But the new S30 Pro has a sensor that is 2 times wider and 2 times taller. So the sensor is actually physically bigger, and that results in a bigger image that takes in more of the sky. We call this field of view. So a better way to think about the regular S30 is that it's like an already cropped in version of the S30 Pro's image. But you could always crop in the S30 Pro image and you would have just as much detail as the S30 image. But something interesting when we crop in on the Pro image is that we also get rid of the rotation artifacts, ending up with this picture, which is nice and clean. To get rid of the registration artifacts with the regular S30, we end up having to get even more cropped in, which starts to get a little bit tight for the composition. So my point is, from a creative perspective, it's really only upside to have that extra field of view, the larger sensor with the Pro version. The only downside is the increased price of the Pro version to get that bigger, better sensor with also, I should say, updated optics to support a bigger sensor. So back to these rotational artifacts that I cropped out. These are one of the downsides of the normal Alt-as stargazing mode on any of the Seestars, in that just after half an hour of exposure, we have already introduced these very visible rotation artifacts just due to the nature of the Alt-as mount system. If you keep your total exposure time short, like under 20 minutes, and/or you stack the raw frames yourself and use pixel rejection, you can get a much cleaner image where these don't show up as much. But if you image long enough with the Seestar in the Alt-as mode, they just get harder and harder to deal with. Now, one way to get around these rotation artifacts I introduced in my last Seestar video is the framing mode. It creates a mosaic of images that slightly overlap, and this gets rid of these rotation artifacts. But the downside to that mode is that it takes longer to create a noise-free image because it's taking a bunch of different pictures at different parts of the sky and adding them all together. But there is a new feature that has come out since I last reviewed Seestars that is equatorial mode. And this does require some additional hardware, but if you're serious about astrophotography with the Seestars, I think it's well worth exploring. So to access the new equatorial mode, tap on the image of your Seestar, scroll down until you see advanced features, tap on that, and then you'll see this new mount mode, and you can change it here by saying switch. And it gives you these really nice instructions for how to set it all up. And so the only thing I would disagree with instructions is for best results, you should keep refreshing the polar alignment deviation and keep adjusting with these with your actual tripod adjustment until you get that green check about 3 times in a row. In terms of the hardware you need, you can use a variety of different tripod heads. ZWO sells their version of a fluid head called the Seestar TH10 that goes for about $80 US. I also already had this pan tilt head from Suri called the L20S, and this works very well too. So I'd say that if you already have a solid tripod head that has separate adjustments for pan and tilt, then you're good to go. But if you need such a tripod head, then the official Seestar one is very reasonably priced actually for what it is. Anyways, with both the S30 and S30 Pro in EQ mode, let's see my images on the Orion Nebula after processing. And I think this really shows you the kind of creative things you can do with the bigger field of view with the S30 Pro. In just 30 minutes of 30-second exposures, I was able to pull out all these really cool dust structures surrounding Orion Nebula. And to do this with the regular S30, it would have taken at least 4 times as long to get this field of view with Mosaic mode, but realistically, it probably in actual time would have taken 6 times as long because Mosaic mode has more failed exposures and takes a bit of time to actually move the whole telescope to the different positions. And speaking of Mosaic mode, I used it with the Seestars back in Alt-Az mode to go after a dim emission nebula with the light pollution filter on this time. And my goal with this test was to see if the new IMX 585 sensor in the S30 Pro made much difference for a much dimmer emission nebula. Because it could be harder to see sensitivity differences with a much brighter nebula like Orion that I did before. And so for this, I wanted to get enough to really see with the light pollution filter, with an emission nebula, could I see a difference? I only managed to get 30 minutes before clouds rolled in, but I was still able to produce a very interesting comparison here. They both did pretty well, but the most interesting part to me was I tried to process these images identically down to using the exact same hue and saturation numbers in how I colorize the data. And so I also used the same stretches, I used the same amount of noise reduction, I did everything in the same order, but the S30 Pro result had a much better showing for the O3, which gives the color of the nebula this pleasing sort of pink hue, while due to the lower signal in the O3 on the S30 regular, the HA dominates a bit more and we get a redder Jellyfish nebula. So I like both images, but it was just a surprising result for me that we got this different color. And I'll try to replicate it with a different target before I can say how accurate this test is. But even not considering the color differences, I would say that for this target, I again prefer the field of view I was able to get with the S30 Pro in Mosaic mode compared to the S30 in Mosaic mode. I like that the Pro, I could include all of both IC444, which is connected to IC443, which is the Jellyfish nebula, because I've always liked images that show both of these nebulae in one field like this. Okay, another comparison that I want to make are some minor differences with solar imaging. I don't have pictures of the sun because it's December here in New Hampshire, and I haven't been able to image the sun due to the constant cloudiness during the day in December, but that's okay because the 2 things that I want to point out in differences are both about capturing total solar eclipses with the new S30 Pro. And I think in 2 ways, this is the best Seestar yet for total solar eclipses. One is that they've changed the solar filter design yet again. Like the S30, it's still magnetic, the S50 was push-in, but the S30 design, while magnetic, was a little difficult to grasp and remove, which is what you have to do during totality for a total solar eclipse. While with the S30 Pro, you can see that the solar filter is raised a bit, making it easier to grab the ring and remove this filter during totality. And so that's great. And secondly, the field of view is bigger, which we've mentioned many times. And that means during totality, we should be able to capture way more of the sun's corona and get shots like these that I've captured with DSLRs at previous eclipses. So I'm excited to try out the S30 Pro later this year on August 12th, where we'll get the next eclipse, and I'm going to be traveling for it, so the S30 Pro is perfect. Other than a total solar eclipse or maybe a total lunar eclipse where you could get more stars in the field with a larger field of view on the Pro, the S30 Pro offers no advantages over the S30 when it comes to solar imaging, but you also don't lose anything because the aperture and pixel size, like I showed, are the exact same. So you could just crop in on the S30 Pro images and you'll have the same amount of detail on the sun compared to the S30. But if you need more detail for solar or lunar, or maybe even planetary in a limited sense, you should go for the S50 instead of either of the S30 options. When you open the Seestar app with S30 Pro, you'll notice that there's a new mode for imaging called the Milky Way mode. And the reason they added this is because just like the telescope sensor got 4 times bigger on the Pro, so did the sensor behind the wide angle camera lens. And so it now has a 66-degree field of view, which would be equivalent to about a 35mm lens on a full frame camera. So this is now a very usable field for nightscape imaging, including constellation shots, Milky Way, time lapses, and star trail. And all of these things are already well supported within the app, and I was happy with how well this all worked here. We don't have the core of the Milky Way available at this time of year from my location, but I was able to get this shot of Cepheus and part of Cygnus, and I think despite this being just 5 minutes total exposure, it does show the potential for Milky Way shots with the S30 Pro. And for me, the two biggest advantages over a shot I could take with just my cell phone are that tracking is completely built into this. I don't have to worry about rigging up my phone to a star tracker or anything like that. And then also, this sensor is open to the H-alpha line. It's like it's modified already. So it's very easy to pull out red nebulae in processing. You can see North America Nebula here, and then this is the Elephant Trunk Nebula in Cepheus. And here's another shot. This the same thing with the Orion constellation. I was able to pull out a lot of HA, part of Barnard's Loop, the Horsehead and Flame, the Lambda Orionis Ring, and the Rosette Nebula in this shot. And again, this was just a very short 6-minute total integration. I would like to have gone longer, but I had a lot to test in limited sky time. The Seestar app doesn't tell you what all the deep sky objects are in your Milky Way shot, but it does have a very accurate and fast constellation label feature with cool artwork. I would request in a future version that we could maybe get switch between these English names and the actual constellation names. Like I'd like the option for this to say Orion rather than Hunter, but that's a small quibble. My tests of the time-lapse feature and the star trails feature aren't quite as interesting, but I just wanted to show how they worked, and they worked as expected. So here's a video created by Seestar showing using the time-lapse feature. It just is an MP4 on the device of the stars going around Polaris. And here from the same angle is what it could do with an hour in star trails mode, where it stacks the trails as they're rotating around the North Celestial Pole. I just increased contrast and saturation a little bit to get to this shot, but here's the original if you're interested. Okay, in terms of negatives, I had issues one night with focus when the weather was very cold out. And it seemed like this would show up after the S30 Pro had been in the cold for several hours. Basically, what happened was I would lose the ability to autofocus. I would try to autofocus just to check focus, and then it wouldn't work. And then even manually focusing wouldn't solve it until I completely warmed up the Seestar, turned it off and on again, and then it would focus again. And yes, I was using the Seestars below their stated operating temperature. The ambient temperature that night was negative 12 Celsius, I believe, and I think the Seestars are only rated down to negative 10 Celsius. But I will say that I've used the S50 and the original S30 in much colder temperatures than that previously, and I've never had any issues. It's possible that I've just been lucky in that way, but in any case, this copy of the S30 Pro was the first time where I saw an issue that seemed to only pop up when the Seestar had been out in the cold for a long time. So through this video, I'm reporting this to ZWO, but I'm not sure if this is actually just a problem with my pre-production unit or if it will be in the production version. It might be a bug that they can solve with software or whatever. But that's it. That's really all I've found so far in terms of negatives or bugs. But I've only had it a couple of weeks, and that in New Hampshire, if you've had something for a couple of weeks in the winter, that probably just translates to a few hours under actual clear skies. To compare the S30 Pro to the rest of the Seestar lineup, I think the new Milky Way mode makes the S30 Pro much more desirable as a travel smart scope, because a lot of times when traveling, you may want to do a variety of things. You may want to capture a quick Milky Way shot or star trails before doing some deep sky. And so I think this is the new best jack of all trades in that sense, in that it can do solar, lunar, deep sky, but now it can do Milky Way, both tracked and stacked, and time-lapse, and wide field time-lapse, and star trails. So it has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. And I think the price is still very reasonable. It's the most expensive Seestar at $600 US, but that's very close to the S50, which is $550. I have a whole other video comparing the S50 to the S30, so you can watch that to get a better handle on the differences there. But I'll just say a few words about the current Seestar lineup now that we have this third edition. In terms of capturing small details, the S50 is still your best bet there. So if you mainly use the Seestar for solar and lunar imaging, go for the S50 for sure. For what I'm interested in, which is nebulae, especially, emission nebulae and dust nebulae, the new S30 Pro is by far my favorite because I like the field of view and the new sensor, but I do think the original S30 is probably the best value for that at just $400 regularly or $350 on sale at the time of recording. While I'm on the subject of sales and costs, I noticed that the Seestar store was offering these little binoculars as an add-on to your purchase of a Seestar for just like $70. And I asked to try these out too because I was interested. I have several pairs of binoculars, so it's not like I really needed these, but I ended up really enjoying using them. They are so lightweight that it's just like no effort at all to hold them up and use them for a very long time, which is often my complaint with binoculars, is they get cumbersome. And between the fairly low 8x magnification and the very low weight of them, it's just really easy to get steady views as well. If you just put them right up on your face, I can get very steady views of what I'm looking at. I looked at a number of the Messier objects like the Andromeda Galaxy, the Pleiades star cluster, the Orion Nebula, and they all showed a nice amount of detail with these, even though these are tiny binoculars. So I was surprised at just how much I liked these, actually. I didn't know what to expect. And I think it's a cool move on ZWO's part to embrace this mix of traditional astronomy, like with just very simple, easy to pack binoculars, with the latest in electronically assisted high-tech astronomy with the Seestar. In terms of what's coming next with the Seestar line, if you're sort of wanting to think, well, should I add the S30 Pro? We can probably expect an S50 Pro next, which, as you'd expect, will update the sensors and optics on the S50 like they did from the S30 to the S30 Pro. After that, we don't really know. I expect we may see a bigger Seestar like an S70, but that's just the speculation going around. I don't actually have anything solid to share. If you would like to access my Seestar S30 Pro test data that you saw in this video, you can join my Patreon at patreon.com/nebulaphotos, where this month's bonus video is exploring some approaches to processing Seestar data with both free and paid astronomy software. And as part of that, I'm sharing all of my raw data that I captured to make this review. And if you do join us on Patreon, you actually get a bonus video every month, plus a lot of other cool features like your name in the credits at the end of longer videos, as you are seeing now. And there are different perks depending on which tier you join. For instance, the Seagull Nebula tier, you get all my videos ad-free and often early. Everyone gets access to private Discord channels, one-on-one messaging support, and a monthly Zoom call with me and the entire Nebula Photos community, where we have an open Q&A to help people out. So if all of this sounds interesting, it starts at just $1 a month over at patreon.com/nebulaphotos. Till next time, this has been Nico Carver, wishing you all clear skies to start 2026.